Not quite as dynamic, but I'll say good morning. And always a pleasure to see you, sir. I'm Jeff Good. I am a restaurateur here in Jackson. My partner and I started 20 and a half years ago. We opened Bravo Italian Restaurant. We have Forestry Baking Company and Sal Mickey's New York Pizza and Ice Cream Joint. We are outliers. We are successful restaurateurs in what is usually a very, very difficult business. As we all know, restaurants are difficult to keep open. So why am I mentioning this to you? A number of you are farmers. A number of you are advocates for local food. A lot of you are looking at me and saying, why is this guy up here? Because we know for a fact he doesn't buy local food. I am a quandary. I have entered into this space authentically and honestly to try to decode why you can't sell to me. And the bottom line is, as I mentioned, the Puranic waters, the West Women as a business, it ain't easy owning a restaurant. There are many, many issues that are in my world that y'all don't know about because hopefully we're a duck and the legs are crazy like this, but we're above the water and you come in to eat and everything's fantastic. But we have a huge labor pool. We have a huge mechanized system of trying to get food together to get it out to you. I mean mechanized, I mean there's a process. And that process starts at 6 a.m. at Broad Street and starts at 8 a.m. at the other two restaurants. It has to be ready by 7 a.m. at Broad Street and 11 a.m. at Bravo and Broad and Sal Mickey's for you to come in and eat. So one of the most difficult things is how can I support a half dozen local farmers to figure out when you can bring me the product I needed at 8 o'clock when on your delivery schedules is based on the problems in your business. And how can I also do that in the volume and the variety that I need based on the business model I've created of doing pizza and ice cream in one place, upscale Italian food in another place, and a retail bakery yellow cafe at the other place because my menu may not mesh well with what you're doing because this particular concept isn't farm to table. And we like to be more local, but we have a hard time doing that because it doesn't meet the business needs that we have. So I've bandied about this question, and my partner, who's the chef to our business, has scratched his head a lot, and he's also very worried about cost and the expense of this. And we've formed a partnership we call the Soul City Hospitality Group, and we're here in Jackson. And for the past year and a half, very, very quietly and very, very authentically, we've met with a number of y'all, and we're trying to figure out what it's going to take to make a connection between me and you. And then leverage all of the not-for-profit work and the activist work that's going on from community gardens through food hubs and etc. to be able to make that authentic and make that work. So our work is about trying to look at this minimum stack of services, and in a nutshell we realize we need to support existing farmers and give them contracts so they know they can grow and they can grow with certainty, and then help them figure out ways to get funding so they can put more seed and more labor into the ground. But they've got to have a contract so they will grow. Because if they don't have a contract, they're not going to grow because y'all can only go to so many farmer markets. We all love farmers markets, but it's not the way you're going to be able to expand your business. It's not the way we're going to be able to bring more farmers on. We need a food hub, we need food hubs, and we need a distributed system, including cold storage and aggregation and distribution around the state to really get the products where they need to go. And then finally, we need to have retail training of the people and the workforce to authentically enjoy food and also know how to handle food. So we have a culinary arts concept. We have a retail food innovation center concept. We have a whole stack of services that is our dream. And as we go forth and we all continue to meet, we look forward to sharing. We come in peace. Our choice is to be a catalyst, not a controller. We call our program the Mississippi Lift, locally invested food trade. And by the very definition of being a catalyst, for you scientists out there, a catalyst doesn't have any presence. It's just the ingredient that makes everything that's there work. That's all we want to do. So it is an honor to be here, genuinely to be here, although I don't know that I bought any local mushrooms this week. So I feel bad about that. But I'm here to talk to you about someone, introduce someone who is a rock star. So again, how fortunate that I am the one to be able to introduce you to our keynote this morning, Richard McCarthy, the Executive Director of Slow Food USA. Very simply, Richard McCarthy embodies the phrase, think globally, act locally. He joined Slow Food USA as the executive director in January 2013, having previously served as the executive director of Market Umbrella, an internationally recognized nonprofit mentor organization for farmers markets, community building, and sustainable economic development. After Hurricane Katrina, Richard played a key role in restarting the local agricultural economy in the New Orleans area, aiming to help provide returning residents with a sense of normalcy and resilience through the revival of farmers markets. From 2005 to 2007, Richard served as the founding president for the Farmers Market Coalition, the national voice for farmers markets, which contributed to the development of the U.S. Department of Agriculture Farmers Market Promotion Program, yielding $32 million over 7 years for farmers market innovation and professionalism. Richard was named a Hero of the New South in 2012 by Southern Living magazine and a Public Health Champion in 2004 by the Tulane University School of Public Health. He earned his master's degree at the London School of Economics and is a graduate of the American University of London. When he's not dreaming up new projects, he enjoys playing racquetball, gardening, and cooking vegetarian meals with his family at home. Ladies and gentlemen, farmers and ranchers, merchants and mavens, I give you Richard McCarthy.
Morning, everyone. Morning. And thank you, Jeff, for that wonderful, warm welcome back to the South. Literally, it is really exciting to be back in the South. I moved up my family from New Orleans to New York about a year and a half ago. And it's so nice to be in a place where people actually look at each other in the eye and say hello and don't look at you strangely. The brutality of the fast-paced city is so ironic because I now steer an organization that is committed to the values of slow. About 15 years ago, when running farmers markets in New Orleans, the Crescent City Farmers Market, we learned of this organization called Slow Food. And of course, we first laughed and thought, I've never heard of such a thing as slow food. And the more that we learned about this peculiar organization that grew out of a fight against the expansion of fast food in Italy, the more we looked at it, the more we realized not only were we drawn to this rather charming red snail, which is the most unlikely of symbols for a movement, would be a snail. But we thought, my gosh, here's an organization that understands who we are and what we do. I mean, in the Deep South, we are continually chided for being so slow, for being behind the times. Why can't you get with the program? This sort of monolithic industrial turf that we must be more efficient, move more quickly. And yet, we are a region that values tradition. Not all traditions, but we value tradition. And then I think what we share is something that Carlo Petrini, the founder of Slow Food in Italy, which is now an international organization, what they brought to our peculiar movement around food, this kind of mysterious, low energy, below radar movement that has been growing for especially the last 20 years in the US, is this one idea, the audacity to believe that food is not just fuel. It's not just fuel. I know that we have this horrible Protestant self-loathing thing that goes on that we must not enjoy ourselves. But food is something we should enjoy. It is culture. It is people. It is regional economic development. Food is all of those things. We shouldn't just let it get narrowed down to this idea of fuel. And so I hope that what I can maybe share in kicking off today's extraordinary workshops and activities is provide something of a North Star for so much of the work that we all do. Because the thing that has happened in the last 20 years in America is unthinkable. It was unthinkable 20 years ago that you could find artisanal bread everywhere, that you could find food trucks that are inhabiting and animating city centers. 400% growth of farmers markets in the last 20 years. The idea of food hubs even being on an agenda in an economic development conversation. Meat collectives, disco soups, CSAs, these things didn't exist. And so much of them have been reinvented here. And being part of an international movement, I think what's so extraordinary is that the industrial speed and girth and quest for efficiency in America has meant that we destroyed so much of what is so important in food, which is community. And yet, the reinvention of it here in the U.S. is done with so much thought and intentionality that in some ways we're ahead of the rest of the world. Because we are beginning to grow a new world within the shell of this sort of horrible gray industrial one. And what we are regrowing is very intentional, and it's built around the idea of a social contract, the idea of trust between supply and demand, between urban and rural, between old and young, black and white, across race, class, all these things that divide us. And why do they divide us? Because all of the formal world, the formal economy, the formal politics, define so much of who we are and what we do by the deficits that we have. I mean, certainly in Mississippi, how many times are we reminded of the chronic diseases, the challenges of obesity in our state? And that is true. And of course, there are, many of you are leading champions on this cause to address these deficits, the deficits of poverty, of illiteracy, I mean, on and on and on. The deficits that we struggle through, our heritage of slavery, of Jim Crow. I mean, these are deficits that we struggle with, but you cannot grow community out of deficits. What we grow community out of are the assets that we have. The role that food plays to be a bridge builder between folks who haven't yet necessarily figured out how to connect. That we can begin to grow the ecology of our local economies through food and through a love of food, a love of our food traditions. That again, this fast-paced world has told us, get out of the way, you're no longer relevant. Well, I think we should hold on to our food traditions. That is the slow food message and meaning of holding on to the traditions and embracing the innovation that is growing out of this chaos as our old world begins to ossify. So, what this North Star, as we do all these different works, whether it's trying to keep a farm up and running, whether it's trying to keep a farmer's market growing during the darkest days of winter, is that there are a set of values that we can really perhaps embrace that remind us of whether we're moving in a direction that embodies the kind of communities we want to live in. Is that at our core set of beliefs at Slow Food is that we believe that food should be good, it should be clean, and it should be fair. By good, it should taste good. Never mind the food is fuel, never mind whatever diet fad that is hitting us at this point. It should taste food. Food should be pleasurable. It should be something that makes us happy. But it should also be clean. And that speaks to the ecological wisdom in the practices, the simplicity of the food. Slow food is often known for our love of rich, wonderful, complex foods, vertical garnish. But actually, the heart of the matter is we believe in the wisdom of peasant food, simple food, beans and rice. That's clean food. It's simple. The ingredients, you can understand the ingredients. There are few ingredients. And of course, most importantly, it should be fair. It should be fair to the dignity of the labor that produces that food, fair and dignity to the animals that are involved with providing us our nourishment, as well as fair price to the person who purchases the food. And to be able to pull together the good, the clean, and the fair together is not easy. Our economic system is designed to make sure that we sacrifice one for the other. And I think it takes a great deal of discipline and verve and commitment to be able to be good, clean, and fair. But I think this is our mission. This is the goal that we have to balance the joy and the justice with food, the urban and the rural, the scale. The system also tells us we must grow to scale. If you don't grow to scale, you're not doing anything worth investment. We should neither be horrified and terrified of scale, nor should we be obsessed with scale. The small, crazy little ideas that grow up in communities, whether it's a dockside co-op between fisher and consumer, or CSA in the neighborhood, or a community garden, the incredible impact of those small efforts are contagious. And so contagious that, we now have 175 slow food communities throughout the country. And slow food is a volunteer network. Slow food are the people who follow the snail and subscribe to these ideas of good, clean, and fair, and play a role in communities, supporting markets, supporting the connection between restaurant and farmer. It is sort of the civil society, the network that may have started at dinner parties with vertical garnished food, but is now eating family style in town squares and supporting innovation in food. It is also a network in 185 countries. And I think that is one of the exciting things when you think of how we balance the issue of local and global, is it is hard to do this work. It's really swimming upstream. But when you realize, I just came back from the International Slow Food Gathering that takes place every 2 years in Italy, with about 250,000 people there, visiting from all over the world. In fact, I see Ben McCarthy, who was part of our delegation from Mississippi, sharing the good news from Mississippi with the world, is that we're not alone. This movement is growing in places it wasn't supposed to grow. And I think especially when you consider the idea of gastronomy, which sounds like a very highfalutin term, you think of gastronomy that must be involving chefs. And when you think about chefs are our rock stars who we think play a key role in galvanizing interest and support around food. But the way our media and our dominant kind of ideas think of gastronomy is just cooking on television, cooking, mixing all the time. And it sort of narrows that work of gastronomy. The gastronomy is really the whole ecology of how our food makes it from field to fork. And that movement is what is growing all over the world, especially in grim places that we're told, you have nothing to offer to our food movement. You have nothing to offer to the food economy. And I think there's no place perhaps more important than the Deep South in America that has something to offer to food because of our incredible mixture of culinary traditions that are embedded in place. Most of the rest of America is nomadic. People are moving all the time. And the great thing about our region is we don't want to move. We want to stay here. We want to treasure that which is here. Embrace that which comes here. And is part of our gumbo. But operating from New Orleans, we often got in a lot of trouble because we would work with Mississippi. I'd meet the state government in Louisiana, and they're like, why do you have Mississippi people involved? And we would spend a great deal of time explaining to them that, well, we live in a food community, and our food community doesn't actually know the political boundaries very well. So we work with our food shed, which includes Mississippi, includes parts of Alabama, in fact. But especially Mississippi, the growing climate, the soil, the tradition, and the commitment to hard work is something that I think adds so much to a global food conversation, which is rallying around some very important ideas at this juncture, where we're beginning to see questions of climate change, no longer questions, but really conversations about how do we address it and navigate it. Questions of biodiversity, which we are seeing disappearing at an alarming rate. And it is our hope that slow food can serve as an ally, as a platform to share the cultural assets and the successes that you all are having here, and to connect to that wider world. Because whether it's folks from Mongolia or Finland, or places that were told that their food culture does not matter, with this large industrial goods steamroller of fast food that looks for homogenization and scale, is that there is a community out there that embraces the food traditions that we are trying to protect and grow and make relevant in the future. Now, in terms of the strategies that we pursue, this is one of the biggest challenges we have. There's so much to be done. What is the best use of our time? Largely, I think it's to do what you love, because you'll do it better. So if you're farming, just farm more and better, and connect with those who value you in the marketplace, or value you for the expertise that you've got. Organizationally, Slow Food is a holistic organization. We believe in the whole picture, which makes strategy often a challenge because we want to do it all. And our local hubs of slow food chapters around the country, they do what they want to do. And we encourage that. A lot of it is early investment in new projects, raising funds, connecting farmer to consumer, and more than anything, in 70% of our chapters, it's growing school gardens. And that's something that nationally we are rallying around, the idea of gardens. And it's with kind of great excitement that I come back to the Deep South and to see that in cities like Jackson, the role of obesity prevention, public health, food, school gardens, farms, are beginning to weave into a single conversation. And this is something where I see is happening at a national level, and it's also something that we're doing inside Slow Food. So we are now running a national school garden program, trying to rally all of the different district school garden works, whether it's Edible Schoolyard, or Food Corps, which I know is here in Mississippi. Are there any Food Corps people here today? Fantastic. You guys are growing the future. So Food Corps, one of our allies, is to grow school gardens that grow a generation of kids who want to run towards the good food. I mean, of course, we're growing school gardens for education and to integrate taste education into formal education. We want to transform school culture and the cafeteria. But at the end of the day, we want to grow a generation of kids who love food. Because if they love food, they will make better decisions about food. They will know how to navigate the difficult decisions because they know the difference between a carrot that they planted, harvested, pulled out of the ground and tasted versus that bag of things that look like thumbs, orange thumbs in a bag. They know how to navigate their food choices because they know food. So nationally, our commitment is to grow and sustain 100 school gardens in 10 cities this next year. And this is using our school garden efforts that are led by our local slow food chapters. But more importantly, to be a resource so that, for instance, if a Food Corps garden is growing in a community, that the slow food chapter can rally around that garden and rally around the leader. Our Food Corps leaders, I mean, I imagine at times it's lonely. Whether you're working in a school system that supports it, tolerates it, you all are taking the lead and you need a supporting community around you. Anyone who is venturing into taste education through gardens, we need to find ways where we're not reinventing the wheel every time, but that we're sharing best practices and creating a network so that these can grow. The other big area that we are diving deeply into is the issue of meat in America. Meat is really at the core of what is so incredibly wrong with our food system because of our obsession with the tyranny of cheap meat and cheap food. We are thrown to scale to produce so many animals in such horrific conditions, sold at such a rate, and consumed at such a pace that it really is confining us. It confines our animals into really horrifically unethical situations. It confines our rural economies where the wealth is extracted rather than generated there. It confines our biodiversity and our taste, where we raise very few breeds of animals, where we could be preserving the piney wood cattle. You know, why are they, or the mule-foot hog, why are they not being raised at a commercial level? Because they don't fit into that industrial model. And so meat is where we are really diving in and embracing nose to tailgating. We're embracing meatless Mondays. We're embracing all the strategies of eating nose to tail that gets us better meat and less. Less of the industrial, better and more of a small scale, humanely raised, ethically raised meat so that we can begin to grow healthier food economies around the integration of meat into our menu, where no longer is it just a hunk of meat in the center of the plate, supported by a supporting cast of characters known as vegetables, or known in USDA talk as specialty crops, but actually integrating meat into our diet where it is flavor, not just the focus, not just fuel, but it is integrated into our culture and our culinary traditions where we eat less meat but better meat. And so I invite you to be part of the Slow Meat campaign. Information about it is on our website. We're starting to do nose to tailgating in football games to encourage that the meat that is served inside the stadium is better meat, antibiotic-free, organic, humanely raised, better meat. Also as a means of bringing the ideas of this food revolution to new people. I mean, one of the most important cultural, culinary traditions in the Deep South is tailgating. And we should really celebrate this community expression of food and football connected. There will also be a next edition of the Slow Meat event in Denver in June 2015, where we are assembling all of the players in meat in order to grow better understanding and knowledge, to grow the alternative, to grow more sustainable meat, to build more appropriately scaled processing facilities, which I know is one of the biggest problems we have, which drives us to the big meat. All of this, though, is meant to rally around really what is at the core of what we're doing here this weekend, is connecting the issues of commerce and community through food. We can balance both of this, commerce and community, joy and justice, so that we can grow the alternative, so that food does not become the thing that sickens us. Food is not just the fuel that we consume in order to get through the day, but it becomes the center of our day. It becomes the center of our connection with where our food comes from, with whom we eat, with how we grow new relationships and wealth through a shared love of food. And these were the ideas that motivated me 20 years ago when we first established a community garden in our neighborhood in something that was growing empty mattresses and tires and turned it into a community gathering point. It was this which helped us to grow community gardens and school gardens in New Orleans, and which led us to develop farmers markets. And what we have seen, certainly in this region, an incredible rebirth in farmers markets as these pivotal public indicators that we can regrow life in city centers. We can regrow connections between urban and rural. We can grow economies around our cultural assets and our biological assets, the biodiversity, products from our ark of taste, the slow food Noah's Ark of endangered foods, we can turn those endangered foods into economic opportunities, much as the way the Mote family has with regenerating Creole cream cheese, a disappeared dairy product that is now on so many menus because they helped to reinvent it. And from the markets, and I think that there's a great deal of conversation about markets and how much time and energy and how many markets can we sustain. I think the most important thing about farmers markets is that they're public places where we learn. And I think it's there that we relearn how to connect with each other, what civic engagement looks like, what the business side of farming and the marketing side of farming looks like. And that what has been so exciting that I've seen and hopefully played a major part in, and hopefully inspired others to do their own crazy ideas in their own communities, is that the markets have inspired more markets, and most importantly, the markets have inspired other models of moving forward. The market is the starting point, maybe, not the end point. And because it's public, it's open source. And the open source is taking us to so many new places where wealth is generated and where community and commerce connect. And I hope that today we're able to explore and learn more and more how to juggle the issue of community and commerce and minimize the risk. Because of course what all of you all are doing is taking extraordinary risk to swim upstream. And moving forward, if our audacious ideas is that food is more than fuel, that slow food can help support, sustain, and link you to a wider world, I hope we can do that. I know that in February of this next year, I'll be bringing to the U.S. a Ugandan agronomist who leads one of the more important slow food programs internationally, is the 1,000 Gardens in Africa. And that through that, when I hopefully come back to the Deep South again in February, is to connect that what you are doing here is so important because it's rooted in the local, and it is so in line with what risks and successes are taking place around the world that is global. And the work that Eddie McCarthy from the Gardens in Africa is doing is food sovereignty work. And that food sovereignty work is exactly the food sovereignty work that you all are doing here, which is that we have every right to control and choose the food that we eat and the wealth that we generate. And that's what this weekend is about, and I'm thrilled that I've been here to share in this with you, and hope that together we can learn and grow together. So thank you so much, and I look forward to spending the rest of the day with you here. If there are any questions, I'm happy to field them. I see a hand up in the back.
The 1,000 gardens in Africa, is that just East Africa or also West?
The program, the slow food program, 1,000 Gardens in Africa, grew out of the giant Terra Madre gathering that takes place every 2 years in Italy, where delegates from Africa became fascinated with and inspired by slow food, much in the way that I did, but I realized, my gosh, they're speaking our language. This is what we care about. Our in, I want to say 32 nations in Africa. There are now over 1,000 gardens in Africa. The goal, Carlo Petrino dreams big, which is good. His goal is for 10,000 gardens in Africa. So now that we've reached 1,000, we're now driving towards 10,000 gardens. And what these gardens are is really, in many ways, the emblematic role of any of the gardens and the small farms that we grow. The large-scale industrial economy says you don't matter because you're too small. And Africa is encountering the most kind of violent, well, the most dramatic forms of institutionalized violence right now with land grabbing. the rush is on for grabbing so much land in Africa for food production that is not feeding Africans. It's feeding Europe. It's feeding the industrial food system. And it is clobbering biodiversity and food traditions in Africa to the point that farmers in Africa are struggling. And equally as important, the dignity of being a farmer is so trodden upon that the importance of these gardens, many are school gardens, many are community gardens, and many are home gardens, is that these are becoming emblematic symbols of resistance to the neo-colonialism, the land grabbing that is taking place in Africa. It is really creating a new generation of leaders in Africa who are not tied to local political structure that is tied to the land grabbing. And it's a fresh and cross-cultural generation of leadership. And these gardens are growing a new gastronomy in Africa, connecting to restaurants that are not colonizing French restaurants or Portuguese or Italian restaurants in Africa. These are Cote d'Ivoire restaurants. These are Ugandan restaurants, Ethiopian restaurants that are featuring products that are being grown in these gardens. A biodiversity that otherwise would be disappearing because the industrial food system says these varieties of crops are not useful to us. And if you're not useful, get out of the way. So this exciting project is growing. It is an act of resistance, but it is not taking on anything other than trying to maintain a garden. And these are catching on like wildfire. So on our website, 1,000 Gardens in Africa, there's a film that describes it. They're growing all over the continent. And we are very excited to bring Eddie Mukibi to share good news from Africa. Because one of the issues is every time we hear news from Africa, it's bad news. And it is it's not an accurate picture of the good, joyful things that are happening on the continent, because communities are organizing to generate their wealth, protect their culture, and to grow a future. And we want to share that because we think that is what is happening also in our communities. So I'm sorry, it's a very long answer to a very quick question. All over the continent. Oh, yes.
What does a work day look like for you? What does it constitute? On the Rolodex, who are the key players? Who's your network? Who you work with?
That's a great question. I am still trying to figure out what my work day is in Slow Food. It is a very fast-paced day. In fact, it's a lie. There's nothing slow about my life. I'm traveling all over the place. I'm meeting with communities. I think that where Slow Food comes in and what role I play in supporting our network of volunteer leaders throughout the country. And that's one of the challenges. Volunteers who may be chefs, who may be policy people, who may be farmers, who may be farmers market organizers, who may be lawyers, I mean, you name it. And people that are drawn to food is so clear across all of the expected political, cultural, class divisions you would expect. It's like a wormhole in the universe between the libertarian left and the libertarian right. And I guess the role that I play is to try and build bridges between these unexpected partners, between supply and demand. And what we try and do is give support and excitement to those leaders so that they can grow and become more confident and to connect with those unlikely partners. Because I think that what we can do through food is grow a very different small p and maybe big P political culture, because we grow our economies and our communities around something we all love and share, which is delicious food. Thank you.
So we're going to take just about 1 minute to set up for our first panel. We're a little behind schedule, as you can see. So give us a second, get some chairs set. If you'd like to visit our